listener production.
Hello, happy Friday. Sacha, Barbour, Gatt with you for this episode of The Briefing. Ever since Liberal leader Peter Dutton announced his nuclear plan for Australia, we've seen a lot of big claims made on both sides. It's left most people with more questions than answers. So this morning, we are answering your questions and bringing you the straight facts without the political spin on nuclear. That is coming up in the second half of this episode. First though, Katrina Blowers is here with all the day's news. It is Friday, July the 5th.
Hello everyone. Well, straight to the UK, which is bracing for a huge shake-up, a change of government in a Labor landslide. After 14 years of Conservative rule, which has been plagued by Brexit, COVID, economy woes, Keir Starmer is expected to become Prime Minister, and his government could end up with what's known as a supermajority. So if we look at the final three polls that were carried out before the vote, the most conservative result showed Labor was on track to claim 447 seats, which is up from 206, while the Tories could lose as many as 281 seats. A result like that would throw the Conservatives into absolute chaos and allow Starmer's government an easy run in getting legislation through. It'd be a slam dunk, Sacha.
Supermajority sounds like the right word. It sounds positively superhero-esque, having that many seats won through. Interestingly, voting doesn't close until 10 p.m. in the UK. So I initially thought, maybe they all go to bed and get up the next morning and start counting. No, they count throughout the night and into the morning. So in terms of when we will know the result here in Australia, we should have a pretty good idea by 1 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time. So we won't have long to wait to see if this does actually happen. Look, Labor hasn't done much campaigning on policy over in the UK, Katrina. It's been interesting. The attitude has kind of been to just sit back and let the Tories lose the election themselves.
Yeah, but that's come under quite a lot of criticism because Rishi Sunak hasn't really put forward an agenda to discuss how they're going to get on top of cost of living. Like, inflation has come down in the UK, but food prices are still astronomically high compared to where they were 3 years ago. Across the board, they're up 31% for the cost of groceries in Britain. Milk is up 55%. I saw this really just awkward interview with Rishi Sunak yesterday, just before they went to the polls, and he was asked what his favourite food was, and he said it was a sandwich, which, I guess that's a cheap thing to eat, but it's also very boring. I don't know that I'd want to vote for a Prime Minister whose favourite food is a sandwich.
Although I've got to say the new sandwich trend where it's like proper paninis with cold meats and like rocket and crema and things like that. If it's that sort of sandwich, I can get on board with Rishi. Politicians are never very trendy when it comes. At least he said sandwich and not plain crackers or something. The other thing that little tidbit I found interesting in the lead up to the vote, Keir Starmer has said that he won't be working Friday nights. He's blocking out Friday nights, even if he's Prime Minister, so that, and I think it's for a nice reason, it's so he can spend time with his family. Pollies on other sides of the debate have said, he's going to be a part-time Prime Minister. I don't know. I guess given we talk so much about work-life balance these days, I kind of respect blocking out a Friday night to spend time with your family, even if you are the leader of the UK.
Well, it looks like you won't need to spend too much time debating legislation in the chamber because with these numbers, it's going to go straight on through.
Back home, and Labor has talked up unity in its official response to Fatima Payman quitting the party. In a statement posted to Labor's X page, the ALP National President Wayne Swan, you might remember him as the former Treasurer, said working together is the best way to get results. Now, the young WA Senator quit the party yesterday after she was suspended for crossing the floor to vote for Palestinian statehood with the Greens. And while fronting the media yesterday, Payman was coy on whether she had plans to start her own party.
Yeah, she did say she was grieving, and we covered Payman's resignation and what it means for Labor and the wider Parliament in our deep dive yesterday, Arvo. Definitely worth a listen. It's in your feed now. You can check it out straight after this episode. More on the car crash that is the US election and whether Joe Biden should step aside. And Joe Biden has now admitted he screwed up in last week's debate against Donald Trump.
I screwed up. I made a mistake. But I learned from my father, when you get knocked down, just get back up. I was in a situation where I was wired. I didn't have a good debate. That's 90 minutes on stage. Look at what I've done in 3.5 years.
Oh, the damage control that's being done. It just makes me feel really anxious inside. That was the president there speaking on Wisconsin's Earl Ingram radio show. Now, he's made it clear he has no interest in pulling out of the race and has been repeatedly backed up on this point by Vice President Kamala Harris. A New York Times poll conducted after the debate, which was published on Wednesday, suggested Trump was now holding his biggest lead yet at 6 points. A bunch of Democratic donors have come forward saying they think that Joe Biden should step aside. One of the, I guess, most high profile, the co-founder of Netflix, Reed Hastings, he's said that Biden needs to make way for a vigorous Democratic leader to beat Trump and keep us safe and prosperous. That's not good, is it, Sacha?
Yeah, no. And that's one of the big concerns is the donors, along with the governors. The governors all also came out yesterday in this joint show of support. They had a meeting with Biden and they fronted the media and said, you know, Biden is our president, he is our nominee, and we are going with him to the election. We've also had a response from Donald Trump to the debate. Now, obviously, he posts on Truth Social, but we haven't seen him out talking about it. Now, this is leaked footage apparently taken of him. Where else but at a golf course? He was sitting on a golf cart with his son Barron next to him. He was holding a wad of cash, not sure what that's about. And we don't know who this group was that he was talking to, but someone in this group has filmed this interaction that Trump had with them. Have a listen.
How did I do with the debate the other night?
Oh, amazing.
He kicked that old broken down pile of crap.
Yeah.
It's a bad guy. He just quit, you know. He's quitting the race.
Is that right?
Yep, I got him out of the race. And that means we have Kamala. I think she's going to be better. She's so bad.
Yeah, I think she's going to be better. She's so bad. So what, better for his campaign hopes, which is interesting if that's what he does think, because then he's kind of conceding that he was facing, I mean, the polls were 50-50 with Trump and Biden pre-debate. So, yeah, and Kamala Harris's poll results in the US are worse than Biden's. So maybe Trump wants that to happen. He reckons Biden's quitting, but, you know, we can expect bluster from Donald Trump. The Biden-Harris campaign has actually responded to the video as well in a statement saying, the American people have already seen low after low from Donald Trump and saying that this was a new rock bottom for him. And a 9-year-old chess prodigy is making history as the youngest person to represent England internationally in any sport. Vandana Sivanandan from London will be part of the England women's team at the Chess Olympiad in Hungary later this year. Now, she is the youngest on the team by 15 years and plans to become a grandmaster by the time she's 10. That would break the record for youngest grandmaster. And she first started playing chess during the pandemic, like a lot of people did, and she's since won all 3 Chess World Championships for the under-8 age group. Katrina, what an achievement. 9-year-old chess prodigy. I feel like chess prodigies often are like, they're very young when they start. Like people start chess young and get really good at it.
I think it's because maybe they've got, you know, they haven't started overthinking in their lives yet. So they're able to keep that calm demeanour and not psych themselves out. But imagine peaking at 9 or 10. What are you going to do with the rest of your life after that? Interestingly, chess has kind of become, you know, it's having a bit of a moment, mostly due to the legacy of lockdowns, as you mentioned, and the impact of that Netflix drama, The Queen's Gambit, which I loved and certainly made me think maybe I should start playing chess. But then I realised I find it really boring.
I'm too impatient for chess. I have never, they taught it to, I'm pretty sure we did a class at school. I think I must have been in year 5 at a public school where we were learning chess. And oh my God, it was the absolute worst subject that I think I did in all of school. I think I'm too impatient for chess. I want things to happen quickly. Chess is too slow for me, but I really admire people who play chess and play it well because it's a hard game. All right, you and I won't be off playing chess this weekend, hopefully doing something a little bit more fun. Thank you so much for being here for the headlines. Next up, it is our deep dive looking at nuclear. So we are going to answer your biggest questions and we're going to cut through the political spin. That's up next. The upcoming federal election is shaping up to be a referendum on nuclear power. The coalition's announced it wants to push ahead with a plan to add it to Australia's energy mix, promising cheaper bills and cleaner energy while delivering jobs and boosting the economy. Labor, on the other hand, is vehemently pushing back on this policy, arguing it will take too long, cost too much, and fail to lower our electricity bills. Wading through the political spin is hard and it's exhausting. So today, we are going to do it for you. My fellow host, Bension Siebert, is not only a great journalist, he's also an experienced fact checker. So I've enlisted him today to cut through the crap and give us a no bullshit explainer on nuclear energy in Australia. Bension, I truly do believe you're doing the Lord's work today. So many people are confused at the facts and figures that are being thrown around by both sides. You're going to take us through the main questions around price and time and feasibility, but I wanted to start with the absolute basic question: what is the case for building nuclear reactors in Australia?
So first off, they're very low emissions. So unlike coal or gas, nuclear power does not emit carbon dioxide. It doesn't emit methane if you're making electricity from it. And those are obviously some of the big drivers of the climate crisis. It does take quite a lot of energy to mine uranium and also to build these massive chimneys and everything that goes with a nuclear power station. But once you actually have the uranium in the mine and in the power station and it's built, then it's very low emissions. So that's number one. And almost every country in the world has signed up to some kind of net zero emissions target as we all try and transition to lower emissions energy to try and avert the worst of climate change. The second point is that nuclear energy is very reliable. It can put energy into the grid pretty much consistently through the day or the night when the sun doesn't shine or the wind doesn't blow, for example. The point to make, though, about that is that kind of baseload reliability, you can also get that from solar and wind if you include batteries or hydro storage or that kind of thing. And the third major positive is, and this might surprise some people, but it's got a pretty good level of safety. Obviously, there have been really famous disasters like Chernobyl, Fukushima, etc. But the way that modern nuclear power stations work is that they are subject to really strict international standards, and the number of people that have actually died from the results of nuclear power, there's like a lot of dispute about that number, but whatever that number is, it's a whole lot less than fossil fuels literally kill every year. Because if you look at scientific reports that are global in nature, they say that just from the stuff that fossil fuel burning puts out into the atmosphere, the health impacts of that kill around 5 million people a year. So if you're comparing nuclear to that, nuclear is a lot more safe.
Okay, so the next big question around nuclear power is the impact it could have on our electricity bills. Now, the promise is it will lower power prices. Is that true?
The short answer is no. Experts from Australia's National Science Agency, the CSIRO, have done the work on this, and they do this huge report every year called Gen Cost. And this year they included both large-scale nuclear, which is the stuff that powers some 30 countries around the world, and also small modular reactors, and came up with a verdict that, let me tell you, Sash, it is so complicated. Like if I'm doing the Lord's work, they are really doing the Lord's work. But the verdict is that if you take like for like coal, nuclear, renewables, all the different types of potential ways of powering the economy, then nuclear is about 1.5 to 2.5 times more expensive to produce than renewables firmed with things like batteries or storage. And if you use small modular reactors, which is this new type of nuclear technology coming through now, that could be some 6 times more expensive than renewables. That cost is likely to come down over time, but we're still talking about quite a bit more expensive than renewables.
So in terms of a time frame, how long would it take to build these small nuclear reactors that the coalition wants to build? And how much is that going to cost?
So the coalition is talking about building both large and small nuclear reactors, but in even the most optimistic scenario, and this is the one that the coalition is putting out, we're talking about 11 years into the future. The CSIRO says that it would be at least 15 years into the future that this would happen. So whether you're talking about any impact on your power bill or you're talking about any impact on doing something about climate change, none of that happens in the next decade at least. In terms of how much it would cost, the coalition, which is obviously proposing this plan, says it would be 7 nuclear power plants around the country. They would be government owned, so taxpayers would fund them, but we don't have a number for how much it would cost. We're definitely talking, though, in the billions of dollars.
Mm-hmm. So the question around safety, you answered that, nuclear power is pretty safe these days. The number of people who die or are made ill by these plants is very, very low, especially when you compare it to fossil fuels. However, there is still the concern around nuclear waste. That has to go somewhere. Do we know how much these plants could produce and what will happen to the waste once it's a wasteful product?
Yeah, so absolutely. Because this happens in many countries around the world, we do know what happens to nuclear power plant waste. According to the World Nuclear Association, a typical nuclear power station for, say, 1 million people might produce about 3 cubic metres of high-level waste each year. In comparison, like a coal-fired power station might produce 300,000 tonnes of ash and more than 6 million tonnes of carbon dioxide every year. According to the association, nuclear waste has never directly caused harm to people, that's what they say, but it does take a few hundred years to decay to the point where it doesn't pose any risk to people's health. So it needs to be stored and it needs to be processed in a way that keeps it very far away from people.
Can nuclear power be a solution to climate change?
It is absolutely part of the solution to climate change globally, especially in all of those countries that have already had an established nuclear industry. They, as part of some of the climate agreements that have been signed internationally, are significantly ramping up investment in nuclear. The issue is we have this short window to do something really significant, really dramatic to avoid climate collapse and catastrophe. And in Australia, because of that time frame, none of these are going to be built anytime soon, certainly not within the next decade. That window, nuclear is not part of that for Australia.
Look, nuclear power is currently banned under national law. There are also bans at the state level. Do these bans have to be wound back before the coalition can start building its reactors?
Yes, they do. The first step would be passing a national law in the federal parliament to overturn that ban. The issue is Labor is obviously really opposed to overturning it. So if the coalition wanted this to happen, it would have to have a really significant landslide win in the upcoming federal election. The Constitution does make it so that federal law overrides state law, so the state bans are not going to be a legal problem for Peter Dutton, but we have heard from the premiers of several states that they have no interest and they will absolutely be opposing nuclear energy. I think the issue he's going to come across is a political one, because there may well be lots of communities that say, well, not in my backyard.
Bension, when might we see a decision made on nuclear power in Australia?
So, as I mentioned, the coalition has proposed this plan. They're taking it to the next federal election, which we would expect to be early next year sometime. They would have to win that election and possibly even win the Senate, which is rare and hard to do, to overturn the nuclear ban. If they don't win the election, they haven't answered the question as to whether or not they're going to drop this policy altogether. And I think it's fair to say, especially with these small modular reactors, which are the newest technology involved, they are prohibitively expensive at this time, but that price is expected to come down. The technology is still developing. So this is a conversation that well into the future we may still be having, talking about nuclear.
Well, thank you, Bension, for taking us through those questions. I know there are probably thousands more out there. And look, if anyone listening does have more questions about nuclear, this, as you said, Bension, this topic is not going to go away, especially over the next 12 months as we lead into the federal election. Feel free to send them through. Our DMs on Instagram are always open. We're at The Briefing Podcast, and we'll do our best to look in and see if we can answer any more of your questions in the future. Bension, thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks, Sash. And just a note also, we will put some of the sources that we used for that information in the show notes.
Yeah, perfect. Check them out below. And that is all for this episode. Thank you very much for listening. Don't forget to share this ep if you did like it. And don't forget to check out our YouTube channel as well. We're at Listener Newsroom, and we post full episodes of our weekend eps there. I'm Sacha Barbour Gatt. Catch you next time.
Listener.